Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Jasmine Knighton. I'm one of the optimizers here at Vine Skills. I help folks get launched into Filevine as well as FVDA or Outlaw. Today, we're kind of going to go over just some general things in Outlaw. Again, if you have any questions, use that Q&A feature. Go ahead and share my screen here, and we can go from there. So this is FVDA or Outlaw, doc assembly. They're all the same thing. They are a way for you to take standard letters and kind of transform them in a way that you can't with docgens. So as you know, docgens are a way for you to, again, pull data, but it's limited in the way that it pulls data. And it's also limited in kind of what data you can pull into each. So for instance, collection sections, as you know, with a docgen, you can only pull in one collection item and one section into the document. With Outlaw, you can pull in from multiple collection sections. You can pull in singular data or multiple data. You can also use Outlaw to combine like templates. So if you have a document that maybe only has a few different sections, dependent on your case type or things like that, you can use conditional logic to hide or show so that you just have one template, and whatever you filled out in Filevine kind of dictates what that document will look like. So we'll go through all of that today. Some of you may have seen Outlaw with a settlement calculator if you're a personal injury firm. And so you'll be able to kind of get a wider look at what is possible here in Outlaw. I'm going to go to this team section first because we have a few items here that you can utilize as you get into Outlaw. You have workflows and checkpoints. So these are if maybe you need to you have a document that you're passing back and forth. Maybe somebody is making red line edits to it, or somebody else in the office needs to verify this document before you go in and send it out. You can use workflows and checkpoints. You can also create themes. So if you need to have a certain look for your document, including font size, headers, colors, all of that good stuff, you can create themes so that you can easily integrate them with your document and not have to go in and manually make those updates. Now, all of your documents can be used as templates. You'll see we have a list of items kind of already in here. They range in the type of document, but we can go ahead and pop into our pleading for now. You'll see that here under the page, we're using that pleadings theme that we just saw in the previous page. It does include numbering here on the left-hand side, as well as some, again, font formatting. Now, all of these blue fields that you're seeing here are fields that are brought in from Filevine. So this is connecting data from Filevine into Outlaw so that, again, with a push of a button, all of this automatically generates depending on which project that you're in. Now you'll also see purple fields in here as well. Purple fields are Outlaw variables. These allow you flexibility. So if you're not tracking something in Filevine, but you want it brought into Outlaw, you can use that type of field. You can also use Outlaw fields for signatures. So let's say you or there's an attorney at your firm that you're like, hey, when they're listed as the attorney, we want this signature to pop up. When it's another attorney, we want their signature to pop up. You can do that. I'm trying to find, I'll go to this test one. So we could add in an image variable. So you'll see here, we have John's signature and Jane's signature. If I click into it, I can make this an image field and I can upload that image already into here. Same thing here. If I wanted this to be an image, I could upload that image and have it as a standard field. I could also just have it as an image field. And when you generate this in Filevine, you can upload the correct image. Totally up to you on which way you decide to go with that. But there is a variety of options for your Outlaw specific variables. Now, to get the Filevine codes in here, again, the blue codes that you're seeing, you do have to connect this document to Filevine. To do that, you'll go to the little gear and then connect it here. The nice thing about Outlaw documents is that unlike a DocGen, this can be housed in any section. It doesn't have to be housed in the section that you're pulling the data from. So if I was pulling medical information into here, again with a DocGen, that document would have to live in the med section. With Outlaw, it could live in the case summary, it could live in the intake, it could live in the settlements, and still be able to pull that medical data in. If you wanted to change the section, you don't have to recode the document. You can just edit the connection, select your new section that you want it attached to, and then the only other thing that you'll have to remember to do is to add the Outlaw widget into that section. Hi, Jordan.
Hey there. Sorry, everybody.
No worries. Jordan is a wizard with Outlaw. She is kind of our go-to. I help assist with clients that are in this, but Jordan is really the master of kind of all things Outlaw. I was just kind of going through how they would connect it and the differences between like a DocGen and an FVDA document.
Perfect.
If you want to take over screen sharing, or I can continue, totally up to you.
If you wanna wrap up your thought, because I don't want to mess you
No
up there,
worries.
and then I can always jump in.
Okay, that was kind of it, just making sure that when you do connect it and you change it, that you make sure that you add that widget into whichever section that you've changed it to.
Perfect. And I think I see you in here in the test one, so I'm just going to go ahead and share that same one too. Um, So something else we might want to talk about too, and now that we've kind of covered the differences between, DocGen and FVDA, is that something else that's really cool in FVDA, obviously you can pull in information from your Filevine, but you can also pull in clauses. Clauses are really cool. That might be top of my mind right now. I'm building out a bunch of different clause libraries for some clients. So I was going to kind of talk through some of those and what those would look like, just because it works similar to I don't know, almost being able to reference and pull in some boilerplate language. Maybe it's different information you're going to see on a lot of your contracts or a fee agreement or anything that you just can see yourself pulling that into multiple documents instead of building out that same paragraph again and again and again, so that you have, 10 different iterations of it. You can use what's called a clause library. The clause library and making a clause is really cool because if you ever update that phrase, that boilerplate language, instead of having to click into all 10 of those documents and update that one paragraph, you can just update it in one place, and that's going to push out to all your documents. So I'm going to go back here and kind of show you guys just our clause library template. You don't have to have a specific template for clauses if you want. Sometimes I find it's best practices just because how often is it that, you have this template that you've used and then you're like, guess what? We're going to do a whole overhaul. We're going to redo and we're not going to use this template anymore. And if all of your clauses are tied to that template that you were previously using, you're going to now have to go in and kind of remake all of these clauses, which can be time consuming. So I like to default to having them on their own template. And also because it makes it easy to just say, hey, I'm looking for a clause. Where is my clause? Is it on this specific template or is it just all here in my clause template? So that's kind of my 2 cents there. I'll get off my soapbox because there's a bunch of different ways that you can do clauses, but it's really cool. We can kind of take a look at this together. We have a lot of clauses built out about ice cream because who does not love ice cream? And when we come into here, you'll notice, let me move our faces, that we have obviously the history of ice cream, and then it's broken down here. And then over here, you'll see in my general section, it says clause library and it has the title here. So I can actually reference this and pull this into another section if I want to. And that's how you can, kind of just keep working off of those clauses in your library, pulling them into other areas. Now, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Let's go ahead and make a clause together so you can see how easy it is. And then we'll kind of practice pulling it into another template so that you can essentially see how that pulls in. We might also be able to maybe generate a test together and see how you can pull in clauses from the actual document when you generate them. So we can always do that too. Let's take a look at this one. We have our clause library. We have this one, ice cream expansion and popularity here. I'm just going to take a little snippet from here and basically hit enter. Anytime you hit enter in Outlaw, it's going to make another paragraph for you. So from there, I'm also going to just drop down into the body by hitting enter again. And then I can type in whatever I want my clause to be. So before you can name a clause and add it to the clause library, you do have to put some information in here. So you'll see here if it is blank, so I have nothing put here. If I go over to my clause library, it's prompting me to look up a phrase because I haven't filled in any information. So it's like, oh, do you want to insert a clause? Which I can do. You can see I searched over here and found this one about ice cream. So I can go ahead and insert that if I wanted to. And you'll notice that this is now linked back to that original clause that it's pulling from, which is also over here on our test. But if we wanted to just start from the beginning, make our own clause template first, we can do that, right? So let's go ahead, jump into here. I'm going to paste that in. And then I can come over and you'll notice that once I have information in that paragraph, I now have the option to give this a title because you have now made a new clause. And so you need to name it so that you can find it later. I always default to naming it something that kind of makes sense. Some people use numbers when they go through and do their clauses. That can obviously get very confusing. So try to name it something that would relate back to the subject matter. So maybe this is going to reference, the 1980s. And as soon as I start typing in the title, you'll notice that this automatically indexes here. That means that once it indexes, you'll be able to search for this in your clause library and just add it into any document. You'll be able to add it in when you generate a document. So that's kind of how you know that it'll be searchable. You can obviously toggle this off. That means maybe you don't want everyone in your firm to be able to access this to add in this clause. So by making it unindexed here and just toggling that off, it's not going to be searchable. And I won't be able to find this 1900s clause, 1980s clause when I go to another template. So just to demonstrate really quick, let's just jump over here back to our test. And we can come in here, let's drop in. And if I wanted to pull in a clause like I did before, and I say, I want to look up that 1980 clause, you'll see that there's nothing there. It's not searchable. It's technically not findable in the clause library. Obviously, reasons for this, like we said, maybe you don't want everybody at your firm to be able to access this clause. Maybe only certain people really need to be pulling this in, or maybe it's a clause that you're working on, right? So you're working on figuring out that boilerplate language or developing this clause, and you don't want people to start pulling it into their documents until it's finished, right? So that might be a couple of reasons why you don't want to index your clauses. Otherwise, if I came in here and wanted to pull in a new clause to my template, and if we just search ice cream, because given there's going to be a lot of them, you can choose from here in your clause library which one you want to pull in. So, you can click in and see them. You'll notice that when it has the two next to it, it typically means that, there's either like a title or a couple different paragraphs situated in there, or there's also just kind of two different clauses with that similar name. So you'll want to pick which one is the most applicable there. So if you find one that you like, and again, I'm just kind of toggling through at the bottom here using these little arrows. If you want to also know where this is linked to, it will tell you. I don't know if this is really small for you guys. I can zoom in a little bit more. But it will tell you down here where this clause is linked. You can click on it. This is a hyperlink. So if you wanted to, I can click on this. It's going to then open up that clause where it is in the template. So it took us back to our clause library, which we have here. I think one of these is the one we're referencing. I know there's two. So that's how you can also click on it if you wanted to see it a little bit larger there, or if you wanted to click into it and maybe make some edits. So that's kind of where we're going to go with this next part here. So once you toggle through, you have the clause that you want to pull in. You would just simply click on it and it is going to now be inserted into your template. Again, this is just really nice. You don't have to recreate this paragraph, right? Because you can just use the standard boilerplate language across a bunch of different documents. Now, if I'm reading this and I'm thinking, okay, this looks pretty good, but you know what? I need to make some changes here. I need to add some additional verbiage to this first paragraph. You'll notice if I try and click into it, unlike a regular paragraph up here where I can click in and make edits, I cannot click into this one. That is because this is linked and it's linked to that other section that we are referencing, right? So instead of clicking unlink here, as soon as we unlink it, you can't link it back. That's it. It's going to become its own paragraph within your template. So instead of doing that, what we'd want to do is simply just go over to our, our clause template where this lives and make our changes to the clause there. So that's kind of the dynamic portion of this that I was referencing before. So now if we want to come in here and say just a bunch of keyboard mashing, if I go back to my test template here, you'll notice I did not refresh. I didn't do anything else. This is all live. This automatically updated for you. So this does update in live time anytime you make a change to the clause. So pretty cool feature there. Something else to note with clauses is a question we get a lot, is that maybe, I now made this change to this clause. I added this additional information. Is that going to change the clauses that I generated previously, my previous documents that I've sent out to clients, right? And the answer is no. If you've generated a document, sent this out to your client, whether it's a contract or anything like that, with or without a signature, it will not be updated. It doesn't retroactively update anything. So that keeps your documents, templates, contracts in the way that they were sent out, but it will just update things going forward. So that'll make things easier on you and your staff when you're managing documents like this, and hopefully just cut down on the amount of time that you actually have to go in and make changes and updates to things.
You could
Gonna
also use clauses when you generate in Filevine. So if you are like, I don't want to add it to my template because it doesn't need to be added every single time that I generate this document. But if there are certain circumstances that suffice, I need to add it in. You can do that when you actually generate from Filevine.
Yeah, that's a great point too. I was gonna try and do a live demo of that. I haven't done one in a while, and I feel like last time I did one, it was a little glitchy, but we'll see. It's usually typically a little bit easier from Filevine, where you actually go and push the button and pull it in. I just don't have that testing environment open. So I'm gonna actually just add another section here. Doesn't really matter. And then I'm gonna come into this paragraph body, and I should be able
The
to
title.
Is it the title?
Mhm.
Okay, thanks, Jasmine. And we should be able to type it. I get my little brackets confused. There it is. User error. We got there. But basically what I did, I typed in I think it's the forward bracket because it's leaning this way. And as soon as I did that, you can see that this little clause library part popped up here. This will allow you so you can type in now. We can start typing in ice cream. We can see all those different results that we have. You can still click in, you can toggle through and see which one you pull in, and you can still see where that is linked. Something to note, if you are adding this in Filevine and you do click on, to go see where this is basically living, maybe not all the people in your Filevine will have access to the back end of Outlaw to edit templates. So if they click on that to see where this is living, it'll probably just error out on them. It'll probably say like a 404 error or something like that, just because they don't have access to actually edit the templates. Only your owners and editors are going to have access to actually come in here, which is great, right? Because you don't want everybody at your firm the ability to come in here and just edit your boilerplate language. So just something I wanted to note there as we're adding this in. Otherwise, you can just use your search phrase like we did, and then we can just come in here and boom, we've added in our section there. I'll do another one too now that I remember how to add it in clauses. But basically, you can go through, and again, if we look for that 1980, right, we're not going to see it. It hasn't been toggled back on. I wonder if I come back over here really quickly and maybe do our kind of 1980s one, how quickly we'll see that become indexed and searchable. So I just toggled that on. let's see if we can now see it. Oh, well, I have to type the right search phrase. Boom. That showed up. So you notice I didn't refresh, it updated in real time. I can now pull in this clause that I so desperately need in my settlement statement about ice cream. So that's kind of a cool feature. And the more clauses you get built out, really the more dynamic it becomes for you there. So I don't know if we want to pause for any questions. I don't really see anything in the chat so far, but
When you're adding in, the clauses on the Filevine side, it's not going to add it for every generation of the document. It's only adding it to that specific one. So if you regenerate the document, it'll revert back to whatever's in your template, and then you can add other clauses. You can also do, for certain documents, you may need to reference certain case law. You can add those in as clauses as well and be able to bring those into your documents.
yeah, that's a really great point, Jasmine. I feel like we've also worked on a client together where they were an immigration firm and they were referencing different, I don't know, like USCIS stuff and different clauses having to do with if it's federal or if it's state or if you're applying for citizenship. And it makes it really nice, right? Because you're trying to insert all those and not have to keep track of a bunch of different paragraphs that are essentially saying the same thing. So this just kind of helps streamline that effort. I feel like once you start living in Outlaw and building out more templates, you can see obviously this is our sandbox, but this isn't uncommon to have this many templates. And just imagine if every single one of these templates had a paragraph that was very similar to the history of ice cream, that basically could be the history of ice cream, but now it's duplicates and I have to go into each one of these and update it. It can become a very long and tedious process. And you really want to use FVDA to keep things easy, keep things simple, right? Because you can, of course, build out really complex documents like complaints. You can have multiple different kinds of complaints that live within here, not just for MVA or premise or if it's a minor involved. So you can have all those built into there. And then we can also just kind of toggle between what's in there using conditionalities. And we can also, if we go back and take a look, we can also make the history of ice cream, this clause, we can also make it conditional, right? So if you're like, I want to pull this in, I want to reference it, but I don't need this to show up all the time, you can always come over to your conditions and set that up. Maybe that's a good place to segue into how to set up some conditions here. So if you guys aren't familiar with conditions, they are pretty cool. We can see we have some set up down here. They allow you to turn your documents into very dynamic documents. Like I was saying, you can have certain paragraphs pop up if it's an MVA case. You can have certain paragraphs pop up if it's a premise case. All kinds of things like that you can handle and build in using conditions. The way to do that is you want to just be clicked into a paragraph that you want to add a condition to. And then you also want to think about what your condition is going to be. So maybe if I want to pull in, I'm going to pull in up here just, let's see if we have a case type. I do see other case type. I want to get a drop down here. So let me just see incident type. Amazing. So drop downs are really great, right? Because they have built-in filtering options. You can only select one. It has to be one of those. You can obviously make conditionalities based off text boxes or contact cards, but it's a little bit harder, right? Because it's a free text field. Same with contact cards. You can pretty much type anybody's name into a contact card. It doesn't even have to make sense. So because it's so open-ended, you have less filtering that you can do. I'll kind of demonstrate that now. I'll start with this drop down to kind of show you guys. But I added in my accident type here. I added this in another paragraph. I'm just going to reference it really quick and then delete it. But I need to add it in to my template so that I can reference it. So that's kind of step one.
Adding in variables to Outlaw, as you saw, a lot easier than DocGens having to go find that list to bring them in. As long as you know the name of that field, you can just type it out, easily find it, they populate. You'll use a bracket and a plus sign to start, and then you can search for whatever the title is and bring that in.
Yeah, great point, Jasmine. It's really nice. Obviously you do have a scroll function. I'm sure you guys have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of fields in your Filevine. So I wouldn't recommend that. You'll probably be here all day, but you can definitely kind of type in a quick phrase, like if I'm searching for meds, I can type in meds. You saw before I was searching for stuff that had to do with incidents. So if I type that in, I'll see all those fields that are referencing that. And something else just to note really quick as well is that it is basically the code works the same way as DocGen, right? The section name goes first, then the field name. Every so often, like this one up here, there's going to be a mismatch between the field name in Filevine and the field selector, which is what's in the back end in the customs editor. So the field selector is going to be this name where it's the plus FV, intake, time and location of incident or accident. But what you're actually going to see in the front end of Filevine when you're in your intake section is time of incident. So sometimes that trips people up, but it's all the same field. So just when you add it in, you'll see that that name kind of updated there. All right, so now that we have our fields that we want to filter on, we want to click into the paragraph we want to add a conditionality on. We're going to go into here, and then we do need to find that field. So I'm going to filter on accident type. So I'm going to go down to intake and just pull in this one. When you add on the condition, it automatically defaults to known here. Otherwise, you would just need to come into here and you can select one of. From there, you'll be able to select from the dropdown when you want this paragraph to show up. So if I want the the history of ice cream to show up only for maybe slip and fall here, I can just go ahead and check that box and this paragraph will only show up for slip and fall. Now, if this was something that I needed it to show up for multiple of these types, I can go ahead and just select all those different practice areas. Otherwise, you can also have a few different options for the dropdown. Instead of saying is one of, you can also say is none of, right? So if you don't want this to show up for certain types, you can select those there. You can also have it show up for anytime this is selected. So in Filevine, dropdowns say they have typically unknown unless it's required. If it is known, that means that somebody has made a selection. So it can be anything from that dropdown, and then this paragraph will show up. Or you could do is unknown, right? So that's an option. I would say you have a dropdown, definitely use it. So try to use some of these phrases here. The next part on that too is now that I've referenced this and made a conditionality, I can actually delete, my kind of reference field there. I'm just going to delete these other ones too, because we kind of pulled those in. But I've deleted my accident type from up in this paragraph, but you can see that my conditionality still stayed. That's a way that you can reference and basically build these conditionalities without having to have that accident type listed on your document. Perfect. Something else I want to point out too is that when you add in conditions, you can go ahead and add in complex conditions as well. So that'll give you the option to say, okay, I want accident type to be slip and fall and some other field or another field as well. So I'm going to kind of show you guys how to set that up. I do want to reference, let's see if there is a notes one that I can pull in. Okay, so typically, obviously, if it's a notes field, it's probably just a free text field in Filevine. Like I was saying, when you do your conditionalities and you do a text box, there typically isn't as much conditionality filtering associated. So just to show you guys, I'm going to come here. I have my complex conditions on. I'm going to say is case notes. So because case notes is open-ended, you'll want to come into here and essentially just select which one you would like, right? So we can still use is known. That means anytime something is typed into case notes, and it is also slip and fall here, this paragraph is going to pop up. We all have gone over unknown as well. So that means if it was just blank, otherwise, you would have to say is equal to. Now, obviously, if you guys are familiar with the backend of Filevine as well, when you're building out your customs editor and you use the equals to, it does have to be exact. It has to use exact case tense and it has to use the exact phrase. If it's not exact, it will not show up. So just be careful when you're using that. I could say is equal to, I don't know if you wanted to add like a buzzword in here to slip, then this would also show up. So that's kind of how you can go through it as well. You also have is not equal to. So you can tell it to not equal whatever you're going to type in there. Obviously, this is a text box. This would be really hard to make it equal something. So just be careful when you do it there. Another example and recent-ish addition is pulling in and filtering on contact information. So you can also set up a conditionality with the contact card. You can come into here. I'm just pulling in our case primary attorney just so I can reference it, right? So if we wanted to now make this paragraph a condition, I can go in, say, okay, when case primary is, and I can type in is equal to. So if Jasmine is saved in here as our primary attorney and her name is just Jasmine in Filevine, this would populate that paragraph for her. This is really great if you maybe have different fee schedules for your attorneys or paralegals or anyone on your staff, and you want to pull those in and reference it on litigation documents. I've seen that done. I've also seen it used when you're building out different contracts and maybe there's certain vendors you work for and a specific vendor has, I don't know, certain language they need to include in their contract. You can type out that vendor's name here, and then that paragraph will only show up when that vendor is in use. So that's a pretty cool use feature of the conditionalities and just how you can use the different fields in Filevine to essentially make conditions. Awesome. Trying to think if there's anything else that I would like to talk about for conditions. On complex conditions, you can also change it to or, right? So you can say, I want this to be slip and fall, or case notes is filled out. So you also have that available to you. It gets asked a lot if FVDA has if-then statements and different things like merge codes do in there. But currently that's not supported. Hopefully in the future sometime, because then we'll just have more ways to filter and build out conditionalities. But right now, this is about as good as it gets. You can obviously keep stacking conditions, right? You can keep adding more and more conditions so it can get, very convoluted very quickly. I personally, a little trick that I do is I kind of read through it. I say, if accident type is premise and is this, it will show up. Just because once you start getting 4 and 5 and 6 conditionalities on here, it can get pretty confusing when things are supposed to show up.
You can also use outlaw variables. So I briefly touched on those previously, but what I've seen folks use that for might be gender, right? When you're typing out paragraphs, you might have she or her in that paragraph, and there's not really a good or easy way to track some of that in Filevine sometimes. And so you want to be able to say, hey, I'm not tracking gender in Filevine, but I want to be able to use that so that the correct pronouns are being utilized throughout my document. You can create an outlaw variable that has those as options and then use those as conditional values as well.
Yeah, that is a great point as well. So yeah, I know we have one. It's not the pronouns that Jasmine previously mentioned, but we do have one. We have this purple outlaw field built in, this little fill in. So we could come in here and give it one of the conditions now and say defendant, excuse me. And then that would essentially, you can obviously still pull that in. You have all of this. This one, it looks like, is a date field. So you do have a few different options when it comes to dates, a little bit more than text boxes and contact cards. So you can work with that. You'll also have this same kind of drop down in functionality related to numbering. So numbers, currency, percentages, stuff like that is really cool. I've seen some folks use that as a conditionality if they're drafting litigation documents, right? If the case is valued at less than $50,000, right? This is what we plug in as the paragraph. If it's more than $1 million, here's the paragraph we need to use. So that's pretty cool. There's a lot of different ways that you can just, I don't know, build in efficiencies, automate things so that your staff and yourself don't have to think so much. You just push some buttons, answer some questions in Filevine or in Outlaw, and then it's going to populate data for you. So pretty cool. Awesome. I don't know if anybody has like any specific questions. It's kind of an ask me anything. So if you guys have any, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we can definitely discuss them more. Something else that a lot of folks are getting kind of excited about now is the possibility to add AI generated paragraphs or timelines into FVDA. This is typically done through a product called Projects AI plus FVDA. They can set it up to generate demands for you. You can upload your own kind of demands. So it's your writing style, your kind of formatting that you like. You can upload it. The AI gets trained on it. And then when you click a button to actually generate a paragraph, it would use your language and generate a facts and liabilities paragraph and a demand. There's also other use cases for it, of course. That's like the main target one now. But that is a field that is pretty cool. A lot of people, obviously, right now, AI is kind of a buzzword and people are getting excited about it. So that is a built-in and it is compatible with FVDA. And if you guys want to explore that, we can definitely connect you with Filevine and they can get that all set up for you. But I just wanted to mention that because I was kind of just looking over here at some different fields that we could maybe talk about with the last few minutes that we have going on. I don't know if we've also maybe talked about repeaters. That could be a good one. That's one I feel like is really useful and doesn't get a lot of credit. So let's talk about that one as well. Repeaters are cool. Anytime you want to pull in multiple collection section items, and maybe you don't want to pull it in as a table, right? Because you can come in here. And if we go to our med section, I don't like how that's popping up. Let me just go down here really quick. So if we want to go into our med section, right? Medicals, typically your insurance, sometimes you have a negotiation section. Basically, any of those sections are what we call collection sections because you're collecting a group of data, adding more and more. It's not a static section like your intake or case summary where you just have kind of set fields. So if you wanted to pull in information, you can obviously pull it in as a table. So if we pull this in, you can have a table going across. It kind of itemizes, all of your meds information. But if you don't necessarily want to do that, you want to repeat specific information that has to do with each provider, you can come in here and build out a repeater. So a repeater is also going to pull from your whatever collection section. You can only use a repeater in collection sections. So you'd have to come into here, add in your data source. So let's just connect it to meds. You can name this whatever you want. I recommend naming it, something that it relates to. So medicals. And then you can type in the paragraph that you want. So if you're typing in this paragraph or you want to say, the following provider, some generic language. I'm trying to think of a good example. I might actually just like have something over in a meds template really quick that I could pull in because
The client saw this
Sorry,
provider.
unmute Jasmine. Let me see. We could say something like, here's kind of an example. I jumped over to another one. If you wanted to list out the provider name and they charged your client this original balance, you can say something like that. I'm trying to think how else I've seen it used. If you're sending out maybe in litigation information, if you have different parties that you want to pull in and you're like, this is a language I want to name all my defendants and then say something about them, you can do that. I'm not doing the best job of explaining right now. Let me go back to my test. But basically it's going to be the same repeating information. It would just change and pull in multiple providers if you needed to. So if you always wanted to say this, and then you wanted to pull in specific information from your med section, you can come into here and use the squiggly bracket. You can get to that by hitting shift and bracket. And you'll notice as soon as I started doing that, I have a bunch of different options here, right? So I do have provider here. I can pull in the provider's name if I want. I can also pull in, there's probably an amount field in here. No, I can pull in billing information. So this is all pulling in from our medical section, and it's using a variable to replace it. But instead of just pulling in and using basically one field here, this would only allow you to pull in one medical provider. This in turn is allowing you to pull in all the medical providers in that section and list them out individually. Let me see if maybe we have a proofing ID in here so we can, okay, we do. So we can kind of illustrate that because it's kind of hard to look at without that. So let's go into here. It's going to say select medicals. That's because that is where this is tied. And then I can come in here. I've only really filled in, the full name of the provider. I can come in here and select all the providers if I want to. I can select only certain providers. So that's pretty cool. You have full range of how you want to pull those in, or I can also filter them, right? So if I want to have obviously Hermione Granger go before the rest of my providers, I can have that kind of structured as so. So now when I hit update, and this is the other one. Hold on. That's our table. It obviously doesn't tell you. I don't have these labeled very well so that we know what is what, but it looks like this medical section might not be connected to anything. So let me just see if we can pull another one. I can also maybe just connect this to insurance because we should definitely have something in there. Let's just pull in company and then let's rename that. We should be able to now see that a little bit better. There we go. Let's try and pull in our insurances. No items found. Love a live demo when things don't work. Okay, let's just make sure. Okay, so typically that automatically pulls in for you, but it looks like it didn't pull over. So now if we go to do this, and we click into our insurance, awesome. That'll work perfectly. Looks like we only have one option here. But then you can see it's going to generate this paragraph and then it's going to say our insurance. Obviously, you can embed the insurance throughout the paragraph itself. Maybe now if we just connect this back to meds, maybe it would like to work for us. Oh yeah, let's add in a few things here. Just to kind of illustrate better what we're working with. But that's basically what we would see.
You can also bring in Filevine variables. So when Jordan showed you that other template, it had the client's name in there. That was just a Filevine variable because it doesn't change. The client is always going to be the same. The provider and the balance are changing for each kind of item that you have, but the client's information is going to remain static. And so you can do a mixture of kind of fields being brought into those paragraphs.
Thanks, Jasmine. That was what I was trying to say, but I just couldn't say it. So perfect. So you can come into here again, you can sort and filter. We're going to be pulling in some more information here. So this is a little bit better example, right? We have this same language, and then this is the part that's changing, right? Just this Hermione Granger, how much is pulling in for our client. So you can kind of imagine the different scenarios where you can use this. You can build out different paragraphs that pull in this medical information and also can reference just the project client too. So that is kind of how these worked. Thanks for hanging with me while we struggled through the repeaters here. But I think we are almost right at time. I don't see any questions in the chat. I don't know, Jasmine, if we have anything else we wanted to talk about.
No, I think that was great. We were showing you documents that we've already created. There's a few ways that you can create a new document. You can start from scratch. You can use a template that you've already created to give you a starting point, or you can upload a document. Uploading kind of does some weird things sometimes, so just be cautious there. The way that it reads it maybe parses out your paragraphs a little bit differently. But one thing to note about Outlaw, if you do have it, you do need to make sure that every user that you have in Filevine is added into Outlaw if you plan on having them generate documents. So if they're not added in as a member, they're not going to be able to kind of run any type of documents. If you switch folks out or have new members in Filevine, make sure that you come into Outlaw to get them added because it's not an automatic add. And Jordan kind of mentioned the permission levels already. Your folks at the team role, that's for internal inside of Outlaw. So you can give them just viewer. It does give you a brief description, editor or owner. And then for access level, that's going to be at the Filevine level. That observer needs to be checked in order for you to give them permissions to do things outside. So for most of your firm, you're probably going to want them to be an editor. That way you or somebody else doesn't have to go in and approve any red lines or suggestions to edits that they have on the document, and kind of go from there. All right, I don't see any questions. Jordan, thank you so much. As always, you're a wealth of knowledge. If you all do have FVDA and want us to help you create these templates, or if you're like, we're going to get started and we'd love to help be implemented so that we can get some additional trainings, definitely feel free to reach out to us. I will pop some things in the chat, so my apologies. I slacked on that, but I'll put at least my email and Jordan's email in there as well. You have the option to go on our website to kind of view these items as well. Jordan has done an amazing job putting together a ton of FVDA videos that are on our website that you all can look as well if you want some more kind of info on FVDA or want to see pricing for launch or optimization services. We run the gamut on all things Filevine. So if you do have Filevine and FVDA and Lead Docket, we can help with everything. We can help make sure that they're all connected in a nice way as well, and kind of give you tips and tricks or suggestions as you all kind of move through and navigate the Filevine universe. We hope that you all join us in a future free help session. As you know, the topics rotate each week, so feel free to look at our website to see what topics are coming up. If you have suggestions, feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear them. And again, we hope to see you in a future free help. Thanks again, Jordan.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.